France should be favourites, but they haven't won at Twickenham for a while, have they?
2005 was the last time that France won in the Six Nations at Twickenham. So it's been a long time. Jim, 2005, how many years ago is that?
Andrew, I don't even know what day of the week it is. I just know that 2005 was a long time ago. I was in New Zealand, actually.
Yeah, 18 years since France. Yeah, and I was quite lucky. I made my debut the next week. I wasn't involved in the France game. But Ollie Barkley and Charlie Hodgson missed about 7 kicks at goal and we lost by 2 points. So blame them. But no, listen, it's France favourites. I don't see it. I think England are favourites.
That's what Sam Warburton said. And when I read that piece, I skimmed through it. There's a part of me that can see that, Andrew, which is weird, isn't it? When you think of the tournament, I would say that England, not just because Sam Warburton's convinced me, but I don't know, I've just got a sneaky feeling.
Yeah, France aren't in their best moment, are they? In terms of their form. It was a really good game against Scotland. So who's playing tight head for them? Obviously, they've got Winnie Antonio and Mohamed Aouar. How's that? They're both banned. So Falatea, who came off the bench, who's an absolute monster as well, will probably start at tight head. Jonathan Dante's back in the mix for them.
Does Jalibert start? Just asking.
No, I don't think he does. I mean, maybe. And maybe the French are going to look at this as an opportunity to play other players because of the World Cup. And, but they're still in the fight for the Six Nations title, as are England, as are Scotland, as are Ireland. And all of the England coaches were at Hambo's dinner and did a Q&A. And when you hear them, you just think, actually, we're going to win. We're going to beat France, then we're going to beat Ireland, and then we're probably going to win the Six Nations. But then again, I am deluded, and I'd had about 4 bottles of wine, so I might have convinced myself that we're going to beat France. I can't see us beating Ireland. So I think England are favourites, but France are, they're a class team, aren't they? It's the fact that they haven't won at Twickenham in the Six Nations since 2005, which Sean Edwards actually pinpointed post-match in his interview after the Scotland game. That will focus the mind, and I don't know, it's a real tough one to call, isn't it?
Do you think France actually care that much, considering the magnitude of the World Cup at home later on in the season?
Stereotyping, Andrew. What do you mean?
That's horrible, Andrew. What a horrible thing to say.
Truthfully, though?
Oh, do they care? Of course they care. Of course.
As much as they usually would, though.
Yeah, I think so. I think, like Goody said, I think they are not firing on all cylinders for whatever reason. It's a long season in France, isn't it? The top 14. A lot of pressure this year, a lot of hysteria in the build-up. I don't know what commercial things the top players are having to do in the lead-up. I imagine there's a few things. I mean, Dupont's still, I'd say, the best player in the world at the minute by the way that he's playing.
Played every minute as well. Hasn't played 3. He's played the full shift in every game. Listen, we're perhaps being a bit harsh to France because they were average against Italy, right? First game, Italy away, bit of a banana skin. Italy are much improved. They got the win. They go to Ireland in a hell of a test match and lose against what are the best team in the world in their own backyard. It was an unbelievable test match, wasn't it? And then they beat Scotland in a classic game as well, where both teams had a player sent off. They're a damn good side. I've just convinced myself that France might beat England now.
I might just add a few other things into that. You mentioned Dante. Cameron Wookie's injured. Their back row, Geelong is now out, which is what a shame that is. He was unbelievable. I think he's brilliant because we always talk about Charles Olivon and Gregory Aldreet, who's actually just a bit Aldreet at the minute. He's not Aldreet, he's Aldreet. But the backbone of the team, like we're not talking about, are we? Like Marchand, for example, wicked, like brilliant physical, in and out of games. We've mentioned Gregory Aldreet on here over the years gone by. Standout player, hasn't been as standout as he had before. Paul Willemse, who we've had on the podcast, has been quieter than normal. I'd say that Flamont has he outplayed him in the headline stuff he has. Fickou. There's no doubt about it. They've got world-class players. They just haven't clicked, have they? So I don't know. I think that this is the one for them because England are a team not as good as they have been, and everything around the history of not winning there since 2005. So good weekend, the Ruggers. This is what it's all about, isn't it? It is.
Do you think England will mix up the way that they play against France, considering the style kind of suits the way the French play?
Have you ever seen a Steve Borthwick team play any differently to just kick it, chase it, play really hard, be physical, confrontational? No, I can't say it. And a Steve Borthwick coach team plays a very particular way, and we've seen that over the first 3 rounds of the Six Nations. We've seen what he's done to Marcus Smith. Anyone that watched the Harlequins Exeter game at the weekend, that's the polar opposite of how a Steve Borthwick team coaches and sets a team up. So I think we're going to see more of the same. And then it's what you want to see from England is how they played against Wales in that first half with speed of ball, accuracy, getting to the width, finding the space, and not being sort of turgid, because it will suit France down to the ground if we kick loosely, which we have done in games. And we need to expand our game a bit, but Steve Borthwick's game plan doesn't marry up to what England fans necessarily want to see. And if anyone left or watched the game at Twickenham, if anyone watched the game at Twickenham or watched it on BT Sport on Saturday, you're left leaving that game, having watched it in any guise, just begging for Marcus Smith to be given the keys to play as fly half for England, as Finn Russell does for Scotland. But under a Steve Borthwick-led team where it's risk adverse and let's play territory and kick it and get better with our kick chase, then I think we're going to see more of just the same of Owen Farrell at 10, and Marcus Smith will have to bide his time.
Because you got Ford in the squad as well. How are they managing those 3 players?
I think it's ridiculous, I'll say it on air, ridiculous that George Ford stayed with the England squad last week. I'd have sent both of them back to their
Smith
clubs.
needed game time, Goody, though.
Yeah, no, I get that. And do you know what?
But
Obviously,
Ford hasn't played in a year.
Yeah, I know. I think Fordy's played like a game and a half or something. And listen, George Ford is a favourite of Steve Borthwick's in terms of how he plays, what he did at Leicester, how he runs a game and understands what Borthwick wants from his team. We saw that relationship at Leicester. It worked exceptionally well. The fact that he sent Marcus Smith back, was it because it was a bit of the big game, a bit of the Harlequins leaning on him and saying, look, you've taken our coach, Nick Evans. We've obviously had to rearrange this game from Christmas because of the train strikes. It'd be great to get our pin-up boy back. He does need game time. There might have been a conversation there. And Marcus Smith went back and answered every question that could have been asked of him, played a ridiculously good game. And George Ford was left training to get better week on week at England, where he should have been playing against Saracens on Sunday. Maybe it was because it was a 6-day turnaround that they wanted to keep George back and not put pressure on him, but he needs to play games. He's been out with an Achilles injury for, 8-9 months, 7, 8, 9 months, whatever it was. He needs to play games, and I hope to God you're not picking George Ford on the bench or George Ford to start the game. Nothing against George Ford at all. I think he's a wonderful player, but he's had a game and a half of rugby. Marcus Smith is in the form he's in. I understand if you want to start Owen Farrell at 10 and play a particular way, but when you've got the quality and the talent of Marcus Smith, you want someone to come on to be able to change a game. He's your guy, and that might need to be the case. We might need to completely change how we play against France at the weekend if they are monstering us. And that's why Marcus Smith has to be on the bench and not George Ford.
It'd be really interesting because it'd be in the 4th game, middle of the Six Nations, the bit of hysteria around Marcus Smith going back to Quins, carving up, Ford coming back in, Farrell not playing that well off the boot, the criticism around England. If Borthwick was going to change anything, surely now's the time. Before the World Cup, that is. Surely now's the time. You're not going to do it in Ireland on Paddy's weekend, are you? So if not now, then when? So if you flip it on its head and you're Borthwick and you're thinking, right, if I love George Ford as much as we think he might, if he doesn't put him in now, then when does he put him in? So
you've got the kid's not played enough rugby to play at international level against 2 of the best teams in the world over the next 2 weeks.
We don't know how much he rates him, though. We've seen players come back in, like Sexton would come back in, Courtney Laws. I know slightly different injury. I know that, and this is where, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I agree. With an Achilles injury, snapped it off the whatever it's attached to, you have that many months out, you need games, right? You need miles. You need, and that's just the facts of it. But I'm thinking Borthwick has got a plan, hasn't he? And if not now, for him to really mix things up. And if Owen Farrell was to get dropped, for example, I don't know whether even if that's consideration, or if Maro Itoje, who hasn't been nowhere near his best, surely now is the time to do it, is it not?
Well, no, I know what you're saying, but what my thought on it, you're talking about George Ford. to really mix it up, you drop Owen Farrell and you start Marcus Smith and give him the keys and say, hey, you go and play in a way that...
Let's have a look at you.
Yeah, brings the best out of you. But Borthwick won't do that. I'd be amazed if he did. He's not going to deviate from how he's always set his teams up, and that is a kind of risk-adverse, strong kicking game, strong set piece, a physicality in defence without necessarily having the stardust that a Quinn's team showed at the weekend, or you watch Bristol on Friday night. There is that DNA and that ability within English rugby to play that way, just not when you get to international level, because most of the time the coaches don't allow it.
Interesting. We're convincing ourselves that something could be happening here.
Who you dropping?
Who am I dropping?
Yeah.
I'd keep Faz at 10, but I can potentially see if Nick
Risk
Evans...
adverse. Negative.
Physical. Northern backbone.
Pod. Rugby pod.